Hello and welcome. I'm Leonaura Rhodes, results coach, author, and retired physician. I've been thinking a lot over the last few days about how I can help people in this weird time when our lives are turned upside down by coronavirus. As a coach, I have a wide network of friends and colleagues who are experts in their field. So I've decided to record a series of interviews to bring you words of wisdom from some of these people, because in these times we are stronger together. Hello and welcome. And today I'm delighted to bring you an interview with Dave Elliott. And hello, Dave. Welcome to the call today.
Hello, thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
You're very welcome. So, quick bio on Dave. So, when it comes to relationship transformation, Dave Elliott is a noted expert, author, inspirational speaker, and accomplished coach who gets results for his clients all over the world. He is especially gifted at teaching smart, amazing women how to bring the very best in men rather than to bring out the very best in men rather than suffering through their worst. I love that. Whether he's sharing his expertise in books or products or on some of today's most widely read relationship websites or on TV, radio, or stage, you'll come away with a new awareness, skills, strategies to get breakthrough results you really want to need. So that's an amazing bio, Dave. We're really, really honored to have you here. You really are a relationship expert. And I invited you on the call because, as you know, as everybody knows, we are living in strange times where we are adapting to life with the coronavirus, and it's affecting people's relationships an awful lot. So could you give us a couple of tips to start off with for couples who may find themselves in tough positions in these unprecedented times?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm having client calls now, and so I'm hearing things, and I'm watching social media, and I'm seeing what types of issues come up too. And look, it doesn't take a genius to consider the fact that in unprecedented times, things are unlike they've ever been before. People are confined to home; they're not going to work. They can't have their usual. Let's call them distractions or things that they do. They can't go to the gym. They can't do their social events. Close quarters are going to create some pressure that we've never seen before. So it's going to be different. And so that's specifically why I wanted to come on and give just a couple of ideas, a couple of thoughts that I think might maybe relieve some of that pressure from those close quarters and these totally different times. So a couple of thoughts that I wanted to share is one, start with the beginning is people are usually doing the very best that they can with what they have in the moment. And so going back to the fact that, these are such uncertain times and people are feeling maybe a little bit more isolated, maybe a little bit afraid. Um, one of the understandings that I take away is like a lot of times I'll start a conversation with a client and I'll ask about what's going on, and they'll start to tell me a situation, and what I understand now intuitively after doing this 12 years since I've been self-employed doing this, a lot of times the presenting issue is it's not what it's about. What you think it's about isn't always what it's about. And so what I've gotten in the practice of doing is helping people to hone down and understand. Um, and so there's a lot of there are pressures that are I wrote a whole book called Same Shit, Different Date, right? And it's mostly about why we date different people, but we have the same issues. Well, this
Mhm.
happens in marriages too. So a lot of times we have our core wounds, or our root, what I call relationship origin of trauma, essentially. So like a lot of times there's like this, like there's shame and guilt, and why'd you eat the last brownie, or all these things, or why didn't you do this, or would you forgot to do that, or why do you always do this? Understanding that people aren't misbehaving necessarily, um, and sometimes these things take them right down to this core wound, and things get activated from there. And then there's also the the concept of funneling it down. It gets to like ideas of rejection and abandonment, especially when the language is sharp and it's pointed, and the attacks are sort of tend to become more personal too. That's when that really takes off. But I just find it's really important to get down to what's it really about, because you don't necessarily solve a problem at the level of thinking that created it. You have to go down deeper and figure out what it is. And sometimes it's hiding in plain sight, and it's really stealth. So I just my here's one of my first suggestions is ask yourself, what's this really about? What's my outcome here? um, what do you think of that? Do you think that would be valuable?
Yes, yeah, definitely, definitely. And like you say, people are together more than they ever were. People who are in the same home together, and it's very easy to misinterpret things. So I loved what you recommended. That's a
Yeah.
great idea.
And I had a situation just yesterday too that I thought I would share too. I was having a conversation with a client, and she was really upset with her partner, and they've been doing some really great work and coming together beautifully. But um, he's in Europe, and he's actually a hospital executive. He's a CFO, and he changed some plans on her. And because she had an expectation that they were going to get together, and he is stressed beyond belief because it's literally his job to make sure that this hospital can continue to run when they're running at a deficit, and it's overwhelming times. She kind of took that personally, and understanding that, again, no one's misbehaving, no one's doing anything wrong, but she had an expectation, and he changed it.
Yes,
Based on his attempting to manage this thing the very best he could. But he was just kind of emotionally overwrought too, and he just needed some time. And I've gotten to understand him very well too. And
yeah,
so, what I helped her understand is, again, for a CFO, for a guy whose entire life is a balance sheet or spreadsheet, like
yeah,
think for him that like every interaction is either a deposit or a debit, right? And so you're either adding to him or you're taking away. And so I think after, as we were discussing, I think she was able to understand better how to navigate it. And also based on the prior issue I was talking about, you know, um, it was taking her down to some very fundamental beliefs. Like people have expectations, and Tony teaches this too. You have expectations and you have results. If they match up, it's great. But if they're not matching,
yes,
you got a problem. And
yes,
so when her expectations and her results didn't match up, the problem began, and she started to realize that like a lot of her core wounds started to get activated, like men are not trustworthy and this and that, and this had nothing to do with him. These are prior wounds, and much deeper wounds, right? And we're making great progress there, but it just goes to show that in trying times,
yes,
new activations happen just because it's sort of luck of the draw, and it's the situations that's kind of triggering it. So by giving her this new understanding about understand it's not personal, this has nothing
yes,
to do with you. He's trying to just manage something that's really really huge, and probably quite frankly overwhelming. And knowing him, I think he just wants to check out, and he wants to maybe sleep or veg or spend. He specifically said he wanted to spend time at home, meaning he was worn out. He didn't have enough to give, and she expects a lot from him, right? And that's okay. But right now he didn't have it to give, and so when he changed the plans, um, it felt way more personal than it really was.
yes,
So those two are in a uh, good place now, because we sort of corrected and we continued, and gave her a better way to become more resourceful, right? Go inside and remember, like, this is not what that seems like. She's thinking like, I'm not important, I'm an afterthought. I thought I was going to spend the weekend with him, I was really looking forward to it. I need him, I'm kind of scared, I'm worried, right? And so all these assumptions, none of which are wrong, uh, but they compound, and sometimes they create misunderstandings. So,
Yeah.
for anyone who's listening to that, to listen to our conversation here, I'd ask you, like, where might this be happening with you? Where might your one set of assumptions be stepping on another person's intent? And by the way, that's another good one too. Like, really never question intent. I can tell you for sure, uh, all human behavior starts with a positive intent. Even if it's not really necessarily a positive action, it starts with a positive intent. Like if someone, even somebody just wanting peace is a positive intent. They might go about it in the absolute wrong way.
Yes.
It might be sharp, they might be mean, they might,
Yeah.
but it started with a good intent. And so when you kind of drill down again and understand what's the rationale, what's the desire, what do they need, Tony teaches us, what do they need, what do they want, what prevents.
Yes.
And so when you understand that really at a fundamental level, you become a lot more resourceful about figuring out like how to solve the problem so it becomes a win-win scenario.
Yes,
um,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. I particularly loved what you said about the positive intent. If we always come to an interaction with other people assuming positive intent until we have proof otherwise, sometimes
Exactly
people
right.
sometimes people are trying to hurt you, but if you come to each interaction assuming that that they have a positive intent, then you start off the conversation in it, from a good place. So that's really amazing advice. And what about singles? I mean, there's a lot of people who are single at the moment, who may be alone and maybe missing out on a lot of interaction at the moment. What would you advise them?
Well, so that's actually more of my core clientele, essentially. So I work with a lot of single women, and teach them how to understand and bring out the best in men by understanding, how they think, how they process, and it's very, very different. It's masculine, kind of single focus,
Yeah.
analytical, and sometimes that feels unfeeling, uh, but it's just how they process. So by helping them understand it, look, I think this is actually a really good time for singles, even though it totally doesn't feel like it. And here's why I say that. I started to say earlier, I think when people get disconnected from life as usual, um, I think they start to consider things in a new way. I think when they don't have their typical distractions, as I started to say earlier too, if they don't have work, a lot of men are very much in the career and mission sphere of life. That's their number one driving focus. It's all about making money, being successful, getting the promotion, getting to that point where they can, now begin to be rewarded for their expertise, right? A lot of men are driven by that primarily. It's a primary function because in the fact is men are oftentimes judged by the level of success they can attain, and also it gives them a feeling of comfort, security, and all those things, and command, essentially.
Yeah.
Um, so when that like changes, when he's not in the office every day, or whatever his position is, when he's not there focused on that primarily, or possibly working from home, that tends to change the way he feels, the way he interacts, the way he starts to think, and they start to ask other questions too, like, once you pierce that bubble of what they thought they were going for, you start to ask more fundamental questions like, is this, what is this really about? Is this really what I want? Am I happy? Is this good? And especially when you start to consider questions of mortality, right? And you like, that's really fundamental. And so I think, and then they don't have their usual distractions also. And I could talk about men or women. They can't have the gym or the social interactions, or they getting meeting friends or the sporting events or the
Yeah.
concerts, whatever people used to fill their time with, they're now finding they're not available to them. And so I just think I think the upside of this is there's a beautiful period of introspection. And I think on the other side of this, life-changing situation for everyone, I think there's going to be an incredible period of innovation. I think there's going to be an incredible period of, people looking at things in different ways, people solving problems that were never problems before. And just, I think there's a bit of a renaissance in a way too. I mean, it certainly has its tragic aspects, and there's the other side. There's the opportunity. a crisis is always about danger and opportunity simultaneously. So, there's always going to be, what's the positive side. So, and I think because we have this technology now, like my
Mm,
first book was about how to write a really effective dating profile. The kind of gets results is about sort of personal branding. So I think it's important to do that, spend that time, um, going within and understanding like a fundamental question that I think when I ask most of my clients this the very first time, I get that deer in the headlights look and it's not confronting at all, but they don't think about it. I say, well, what do you bring to the table in a relationship? And it's like that deer in headlights, like, I don't know. And some people are really good. Some people know. Um, and then other people are really taken aback by the question, have never considered it. But look, this is the reality. The reality is it's a partnership, and a partnership means two people bringing equal and complementary gifts to the table, and together two of us are better than one. And so you've got to really be clear if you want to enter a partnership, what do you bring to it? And you do bring a lot of great gifts, but again, most people, I think, they tend to be hiding in plain sight.
yeah.
I'll give you an example. One of the most powerful exercises that I give my clients was actually written up in a Hay House book by one of my clients.
Mm.
Um, I call it the magic of 100. I say, write me down a list of 100 great traits that you bring to the table for your partner in a relationship. And and it's always interesting because I have some people that are like, oh, this is awesome. And they do it and they send it back that day, right? And they love it. And other people, including the woman who wrote this book, is a Hay House contract. I mean, it's the number one personal development publishing house in the world. I don't have a Hay House publishing contract, but she did, and she shared this assignment, and because she struggled with it for
Mm.
like 4 months, and I would check in with her. I'd say, "How you doing on that assignment?" And she'd be like, "I'm up to 37. I'm up
Oh
to
my word.
40. I'm up to 62." And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
send me what you got, let me take a look. And the interesting story for her, she shared it in the book, like she really struggled, and then she got to 99 and 100, and 99 was I'm a radiant woman, and then 100 was I'm a powerful creator. And what is so cool about that, immediately after she finished that assignment, she had entered this contest as an unpublished author for Hay House, and she won.
Oh,
And because she claimed, I am a powerful creator, number 100, not 32 or
yeah.
27, 100 was I'm a powerful creator. And then she got this book contract, which is just amazing. And I'm so proud of her. I think it was awesome, but she claimed it and then it showed up in the world because she went there first. And
Yeah.
I think that's the power of it too. I think people just show up differently, when it's so fundamental. You're going to know your value and show your value. And when most people have no idea about their value, I think they show up in disempowered ways. I think they don't speak their truth. They tend not to put up boundaries. They tend certainly not to enforce them.
Yeah.
And they tend to settle for way less than they should or need to. And so, look, I think that people should show up in a relationship, in an empowered way. And I think that alone takes care of probably 85% of the problems if two people show up in an empowered way. Because when they show up in an empowered way, they'll be able to give grace. They'll be able to give forgiveness. They'll be able to speak their truth. They'll be able to ask for what they want. They'll be able to make a request rather than a demand. Right? These are just huge things that eliminate everything else that comes with them when you do it in an empowered way.
Yes.
So
And
I think it's a good time for singles.
it's interesting. I did with two clients yesterday similar exercises that were, and I call them about being about identity and getting very clear on who you are as a person. And for one of these people, it was for interviews, because she'd had a couple of interviews where she would be asked, "Tell me who you are." and she would get really, on the calls with me, she'd get really mad. Why do they keep asking that stupid question? And so I've had her working for the last couple of weeks on who she is, that sense of
Yeah,
identity, and her strengths. And I said to her, I want you to get to the point where when that question is asked, you're like, yes, this is my favorite question, because
exactly
then you
right.
get to share your gifts. And
Right. And
to,
that's the strongest force in the human personality is stay
yeah,
consistent with who you believe you are. And if you totally want to avoid that conversation because you just fundamentally don't know it, I mean, that's why you absolutely need to do it. It really is a fantastic question for an interviewer in assessing a pool of candidates.
yes,
You want someone who brings, what are you literally hiring them for? You're literally hiring them for the gifts they bring to the table. And if they are fundamentally unaware of the gifts that they bring, I mean,
yeah,
you're going to have to, next candidate.
yes,
And so
absolutely.
it's really fundamental. And I'm really glad that you're lovingly giving her a nudge. Um,
Yes, yes.
so good for
And
you.
yeah, and what you mentioned, I think, is, like we were saying, is not only important for relationships, it's important for life. And it's, for me, it's the building block of personal development. Who am I as a person? And then who do I want
Right.
to become? Because unless you know where you're starting from, how on earth are you going to, it's like setting off on a journey, but not knowing where you're starting from and not being able to put the starting point into the GPS. It's going to be a difficult journey if you don't know where you're starting. So
Right.
I love that advice. Um, Dave, I have a couple of clients who are having long distance relationships, which previously was fine because they could just hop on a plane. Um, but now that's turning out to be really tricky, and they're facing possibly months without seeing their loved one. What advice do you have people for that situation?
I love that question because that actually is part of my history. Actually, my wife, I'm here on the east coast of United States, near Baltimore, and my wife is from Sydney. I don't know if there's two places further apart on the globe.
Yeah.
And by the way, when we first met, she was doing an Eat, Pray, Love journey around the world, so she could have been anywhere. She's been to like 70 some countries, and so we literally started that way. Look, I think that can be a great thing, and I also acknowledge these are challenging times to do it. Um, I think the one most important uh, thing, like I would say, the one thing in a long distance relationship is you have to have two people who are willing um, to 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 give it their all and see if they can make it work. And I think the most important thing is find a way to bring some certainty. Now, again, right now, um, the number one thing that people need to do in a long distance relationship is both need to commit to bringing out their calendars uh, and syncing them up so that you can remember what I said about my other client. What really got her upset was when there was a change of plans. So there was an expectation and a result and they didn't match, right? So that really happens when you're not, in the same general area. So number one thing is, when am I going to see you next, or when am I going to talk to you next? And then come up with, like, kind of rituals or something. Technology does make it so that we can stay in contact, and that's huge. So, I mean, if you just have a, like, typical time that you connect, or, again, when this thing is over, we're gonna, meet here, or we're gonna do this, or I'm coming to visit, or you're coming here. If you have something to look forward to, a compelling future, essentially, that's probably the most important part. And look, I think this is a time, again, a time of great uncertainty. People tend to want to pull towards certainty. So I think this is a time where you can actually deepen your relationship and fundamentally make it go deeper, become um, uh, more appreciative, more, I guess I want to say reliant, but reliant on that other person who's there, who gets you, who understands you better than anyone else. And look, I think that's the key in a relationship. It's a mutually supportive, relationship between two equals, right? Two
Mm.
amazing people that bring great things to the table. And so I think that's a time to fundamentally go deeper. Um, and just answer some of those bigger questions. I I think these are great times that we're not, in the prior to, like, the internet and all this. You were limited to who you're going to meet, in a local bar or a club or something, or an event, or your church or synagogue or wherever you're meeting, you were limited, by proximity. And now those things are, those are not as big of factors anymore. Now you can actually come together because you have, ideas in common, similar views on life, the really deep stuff that, if it's just happenstance, you might not, be able to connect that. I mean, one of the reasons my wife and I got together is because, like, she was actually a relationship coach as well, and we were introduced to do some work together as like a presentation.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
yeah. Honestly, the first time we met, there wasn't really that instant chemistry zing. But as we got to know one another, we came from that more like a total place of appreciation, which I think uh, was was just really, in some ways, I think it took us deeper, faster in ways that being in proximity wouldn't. So look, I think there's a lot of upsides, and again, right now it's kind of an enforced necessity that you might have to only have a digital relationship for a period of time. But I still think there's a tremendous upsides to that, and I think if you can find someone amazing, uh, I think you absolutely go full speed ahead and see if
Yeah.
you can make it work. If two people are committed and willing to try to find a way. So I
Yeah, absolutely. And we are, we are blessed with technology today. When you were talking, I was remembering my husband and I both traveled at different times to Australia and Asia when we were living in the UK, and and our main method of communication back then was postcards and letters, and so it
right,
would be, it would take several weeks for that postcard to arrive, and I remember, kind of saving up to make a phone call because it would be $20 to to phone for 5 minutes, and then the line was
right,
terrible. So, today we are blessed with this amazing technology, which allows us to communicate in the moment, and so there's no excuses.
right. That's
Yeah.
a great perspective check too. I think sometimes we focus only on the problem or the downside. How amazing is it that we have technology that you could be on the other side of the world and you have a crystal clear call and a view of the person, and you're interacting in real time, and it's free. I mean, that's just incredible. These are amazing times, and there's going to be even more, amazing advancements, like I said, on the other side of it too. So,
Yes, I
the
think these
resilience.
times are bringing out the resourceful in people, which I think is super important. I feel that I think we're probably similar age, Dave. Our generation um, we're a generation that became less resourceful than our parents, because our parents had kind of grown up in a time where everything wasn't handed to them on a plate and they needed to figure out how to do things. And there's people in our generation that are extremely resourceful, but there's also a lot of people who really never had to want for anything. I've had clients who've said that to me. I grew up so incredibly comfortable that I never figured out how to do things for myself. And I hear stories. Just a friend last night was telling me, her 21-year-old daughter, up until 2 weeks ago, had 5 things she could cook, and one of them was cheese on toast.
Oh, wow.
And she sent her a picture yesterday of her cooking bread, from scratch, baking bread from scratch.
Oh,
And
wow.
my,
Okay.
and my friend said, I think if it hadn't have been for this, she wouldn't have had to kind of push her limits of her cooking skills. But it occurs in lots of other areas of life. People are getting out their sewing machines to make masks for healthcare workers at the minute. I mean, who would have thought 2 months
Yes.
ago that people would be doing that? So
Yeah. That's a great look at, like, the, unintended consequences too. Like, a parent might take it as a badge of honor that, like, I provide for my kids and I want them to have it better than I have it, this kind of thing. And then realize you've kind of, without noticing it, you actually raised someone who was a little bit, unable to push back against resistance, or maybe is not as well prepared, for for the future and for times of
Mm.
pushback as you might have liked to have been. But again, it came from a good place. So
Yes,
I think that's
absolutely.
an incredible perspective check, and good for her for
Yes.
stepping up and making bread. Good for her. That's awesome.
Absolutely. My I have two young adult kids, and they often say to me, "You didn't give us enough adversity," which, you know, my intent was good.
Right? Yeah,
So
you're right. Get out of my house.
yeah, exactly. So well, thank you, Dave. Any last words of wisdom to share with our viewers on, how to make relationships work in these interesting times?
Yeah, another idea too. I was going to bring out too. Sometimes the fundamental, like my wife and I do this. Do you want to be right or do you want to be in love?
Mm,
You got to make that decision because you can't usually do both. And the smart ass in us usually goes, well, I can do both, but
mm,
you really can't. It's sort of do you want to just like, yeah, let's resolve this. How do we get on the other side of it? And just you come with that sort of humble intent. Like I do want to be in love. I do want to be committed. I do want to find a way to make sure that both of us are the key word is enough. In a relationship, you both need to get enough, whatever that is. Enough attention, enough time away, enough peace, enough love, and enough support. Not too much, right? So it's all there's a lot of different levels on these things, and if you care enough about your partner, you'll learn or understand the way to support them in the way they want to be supported, or loved in the way they want to be loved. um, and another thing that I think, here's the thing I wanted to mention as well. Brene Brown does this amazing, it's just this amazing concept that she talks about in her books. Is a lot of times when you tell yourself a story, what she calls it is the shitty first draft. And so like the shitty first draft that I'm telling myself right now is that you're selfish. And that's sometimes that's just fundamentally not true. A great way to kind of change that is, well, where are you selfish? Or like, so like for instance, I mentioned this on the call the other night. Like if one person's way of getting rid of stress is taking a nap, and the other person's is dancing to very loud music, neither one of those wrong independently, right? They're both very good ways to do it. However, if you try to do them simultaneously in close quarters, you're going to have an understanding, and someone's going to seem selfish, probably both, right? So it's just one of those ways where we kind of work it out. So, and again, as I mentioned, collapse it too. If you think your partner is selfish, like, well, where are you selfish? Well, what about the time you did this and you didn't ask if they wanted something, or whatever? I think it's, we're so quick to judge other people, and sometimes harshly.
yeah,
If you'll judge your partner harshly, you'll tend to judge yourself harshly too. But if you can, again, if you step back and say what I said earlier, what's the positive intent? What did my wife really want, or what did my girlfriend really want, or my boyfriend really want, or whatever the question is. Um, I think it just comes from grace, and you rewrite that rotten first draft, and you tell a more effective story that's not based on character assassination, or just you being tired or
yeah,
hungry or upset or frustrated or scared or lonely. Again, when you pull it down and you understand what's this really about,
mm,
sometimes people can be in just a rotten mood because they're hungry or because they're scared or something like that.
yeah,
So ask a better question. What do you really want? What's your outcome? You know, I think is a really powerful tip. And then the one last thought, like I don't have this magical belief that every relationship has to be forever and ever, because sometimes they're just not. I mean, everything comes for a reason, a season, a lifetime kind of thing. uh, Sometimes when you get the lesson, you're free to go. I kind of say it's like in my book I talk about, it's like third grade. The reason you're not expected to be in third grade today is because you fulfill the requirements of that grade level for your municipal um, governing body, right? You got all the requirements. So you know it's okay when you get the lesson and you move on. I think the fundamental lessons are, relationships are going to teach you how to love yourself and love other people, and I think that's just important. And the truth of the matter is there's some people who are not able to do that. And if you made a decision when you're like 18 years old, now 30 years old, or 30 years later, or 5 years later, or 6 months later, you have a new understanding of that decision you made. You know, it's
Yeah.
okay to understand that too, but I think it's just important to kind of do the work, do everything you can do. Like, you can't change another person, but you can change you.
Yeah.
So if you just commit to a better understanding, of you, um, I think that's powerful. And you, I was going to say too, in these times of challenge, and people in our community who are going to see that, if they need to chat about something, please reach out. I'm happy to chat with people. And it's not
Yeah.
not looking for clients. I'm looking to serve the community. So if I can help in some way, I invite people to reach out. So just let
That's
me
so
know.
incredibly kind. Thank you, Dave. And for those of you that don't know, Dave and I both run power teams, which are
Yeah.
local personal development meetup groups. And of course, in this time, we're not able to meet up in person. So our communities have all come together and are working together to bring resources to more people, which is we all felt it was time to step up, which is one of the reasons that I'm recording these interviews as well. It's like, when you have valuable information to share, then now's the time.
Yeah.
So thank you, Dave, for all of the work that you do and for your incredible insight and wisdom today. I certainly took a lot from it, and I'm going to go and do some thinking myself.
Oh,
So
can I
thank
just add one thing real quick? You
you.
just mentioned that. Thank you for
Yeah.
bringing that up about the Baltimore Washington Power Team, which is the one that I founded. We're celebrating our 15th anniversary on April the 8th, and I have an amazing guest, one of my dearest mentors, Deborah Battersby. She's a master trainer in the Robbins organization, and just an incredible gift. I've gotten her to show up on the Zoom. We'll be promoting it on all the channels where you and I are promoting all the other power teams. I hope you'll tune in. She's going to have some great content and great wisdom about how you can't leave home, so it's a great time for you to go home and kind of reconnect with your bigger purpose and who you are. And it's going to be just stunning. I had a great call with her yesterday, so I hope if they hear this interview, please take advantage of that one too. Deborah's amazing, so
Yes.
she's one of the best. I just adore her, so
Yeah.
hope people will tune in for that too. April 8th.
Wonderful. Thank you, and I'll share the information for that on the video. And like you say, I mean, now is. I was talking with a client yesterday, and she's like, "I'm really bored. I don't know what to do." And I said to her, "Now is the most incredible time to learn whatever it is you want to learn, whether it be personal development or whether you want to go and tour the national parks. You can do so much for free online today. So there's no excuse. If you want to do some personal development, there's no excuse today. There's a huge amount of resources out there. So seize the moment."
Yes.
So one last time, thank you so much, Dave. It has been an honor interviewing you today, and I've learned so much. So thank you again, and thank you to you all for watching. Stay safe and stay connected. Bye for now.
Thank you.